Welcome to Uncomfortable Growth Uncut, where we celebrate those who defy fear, embrace growth, and live without regret. In a world that celebrates perfection, we rarely hear about the challenges, fears, and crossroads that successful leaders grapple with across work and life. Uncomfortable Growth Uncut shines a light on their personal story and the critical human skills we all need today to turn trials into triumph. So, welcome everyone to Uncomfortable Growth Uncut. Today I'm here with Louise Cummins, who is very well known in the marketing industry. She's been a CMO for many years, but more recently, she has become the founder or a founder of the Australian Centre for AI and Marketing. So it's lovely to have you on Uncomfortable Growth Uncut. Louise, welcome.
Well, thank you for having me.
So we're going to jump straight into your uncomfortable growth story. So what would you like to share with us today?
Yeah, I think a big piece of my career has always been about pushing myself into those uncomfortable growth moments. So, one thing that was interesting in terms of even my going into I was reflecting this because in my career, I have seen the start of the internet. That's how, when you've been around for a while, you start seeing those seismic shifts. But I was part of the first team that brought Invisalign into Australia, which was a category changing in teeth straightening. I was part of the first team that brought in DVDs into Australia with MGM Studios, one of the
Mm.
first teams marketing Blackberries for Optus. So, and just seeing these like big seismic shifts that actually has really excited me and in my career. But as part of that is a real level of not being comfortable because
Mm.
you
Mhm.
have to keep pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. So I think this is a really topical conversation because I think
Mm.
everybody is being pushed outside their comfort zone right now. But I also believe when you're outside of your comfort zone, that's when the magic happens.
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because it is where the magic happens, I believe, too. And so many people can relate to that, but it's also still sometimes hard to push through that
Yes.
discomfort. So it's got that, double-edged sword of, the good stuff's on the other side, but you still have to be able to lean in or push through or take action when you're kind of like not feeling the growth part yet, the positive part.
Well, I think we're also naturally wired to wanting to be comfortable, right? So
Mm.
that's the other thing
Mhm.
is that I think even when we want change, when it's actually forced upon us, it's actually really hard. So I think
Mm.
ultimately, as humans, we're hardwired to not want that change and to have that level of comfort. But I was very intentional about 6 years ago. I had a year of yes.
Mm.
And I remember I was asked to speak. It was around the time that I had written a book about my son that went global really quickly, and all of that was pushing myself out of my comfort zone. Before I'd been the person either promoting people behind the camera. Suddenly, I was being asked to be on news shows, and I
Mhm.
was really feeling a level of discomfort. And I went, okay, for the next year, I'm just going to agree to every kind of key opportunity that comes my way. And it was one of the first times it was actually at a big media agency, and they asked me to come in, speak about the book. And I was so outside my comfort zone because I hadn't really had a conversation around something so personal about my family and sort of
Mhm.
doing that. So but it was really interesting from there actually the butterfly effect that happened from that year because somebody then
Mm.
had contacted me about another opportunity, which then led to another, to another, to another. So I really learnt in that year the power of actually saying yes.
Mm. And not Not stopping to think about, will I or won't I? I'm just going to say yes. And then that decision pushes you forward.
Yeah, I didn't do like everything, but I did sort of, where I felt there was an alignment.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's very hard. It's very hard to push yourself out of your comfort zone. The other interesting thing around pushing yourself out of your comfort zone is, I remember there was some research that said that statistically, if you walk into a room, 10% of people will actually dislike you.
Hmm.
Statistically, anybody. So as soon as you put yourself out there, that number obviously rises. As soon as
Hmm.
you start having a level of success in Australia, that rises again as well. So I think the other thing is getting a level of discomfort that actually, in putting yourself out there, you're not actually going to please everybody, and being
Hmm.
also okay with that. So that's a really tension point a lot of people find is it's a lot
Mm,
easier to not put yourself out there and not to kind of risk people not liking you.
yeah. And I guess today too, because it's so easy to like or dislike or to leave comments or, to actually be visible with that, that piece of do they like you or not? Right.
And
So,
that's, yeah, it's not so much like I'll do that, that sort of need for, it's more being open that suddenly you're open for criticism by
mm,
actually putting yourself out there. It's not sort of like you need a connection point of
mm,
getting affirmation from everybody. It's
hmm,
more about the fact that you will be critiqued in a way that you wouldn't be if you sat on your couch, didn't
yeah,
push yourself out there. So with it is some great opportunity, but also there is that tension point.
yeah, yeah. It was interesting when I first started to, kind of develop my own stuff under my name. So before doing what I'm doing now with Uncomfortable Growth, I did consulting with my company with my husband, which is under the name McMorgan. And it's really interesting because the difference between being behind a company name versus being you as the front, and putting yourself out there is actually really significant. And I remember
Significant.
going, oh, I feel like I need to do this. This is what I believe in. This is what I care about. But just putting yourself out there and, you being the brand is a very, very different type of like situation than being part of a company. And I do remember feeling that, that kind of uneasy bit of the squirm. I like to use the term the squirm where, it's a little bit nerve-wracking, but it's the right thing. And so you do it. And like you said, you have to get comfortable with not everyone likes what you do, and that's okay. But the
And
people
I
who
think,
do love what you do, they're they're going to be able to find you.
yes, I think being authentically you, though. So I
Mm,
remember working with somebody years ago and they were deeply uncomfortable about marketing themselves. They said, I feel like I'm just getting a big foam finger and I'm pointing it this way. And I was like, well,
mhm,
you have to do what's right for you that then connects in with who you are and that you feel that level
mm,
of comfort. So that's where the interesting thing is feeling a little bit uneasy, but also what is authentically you.
mhm,
Um, I was a judge on an influencer awards, and I find
mhm,
that fascinating when your role and your persona and you as an individual is all intertwined. And
mm,
what I think that can be really fascinating. So I think to your
mm,
point, when you become your business, it can be an interesting kind of grappling of what that looks like, and also how much do you give to yourself about yourself online.
mhm,
But the
mhm,
other thing that I think you just tapped on, which I think is also interesting, is the company versus being on your own and yourself.
mhm,
Because I think it's also fascinating how people tie so much of their personal identity to an organization.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember when I was young, we had a family friend, let's call him John, and he
Mm-hmm.
was CEO of a big company.
Mm-hmm.
And then he got retrenched.
Mm-hmm.
And John wasn't as relevant anymore. He wasn't
Mm-hmm.
relevant, actually.
Mm-hmm.
He walked out that door and he
Mm-hmm.
was just John.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's the other piece around understanding you as a person so that if your role or what you do is inextricably connected to your identity, I think that can
Mm-hmm.
be really dangerous and problematic.
Mm-hmm.
So I like what you just said about how it's very different being on yourself, and that goes to that adaptability. But I think
Yeah.
whatever the case is, I think just being clear about who you are is just so incredibly important.
Yeah. And I think it's very easy to, I guess, basically assume that what you do at work is a big part of your identity because you're doing it for so much time. So,
100%.
like you're doing every week, 48 weeks a year, many hours. And particularly when you've been with a certain company for a long time, you generally you pick up the values of the company, the people, they're your tribe. So there's a big part of your identity that's wrapped up with the organization. And and it's really interesting to, I guess, explore and understand that you are more than your job. And so, in the case that you kind of shared with John, your family friend, it's like if you don't separate who you are from what you do, it can be devastating if suddenly what you do is taken away.
100%. And I think I don't know the latest stats, but I think it's like people will be retrenched 3 times in their careers.
Yeah.
So, the companies will keep spinning.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, no matter what level you are, the world will keep turning and
Mm-hmm.
there is an exchange, right? So I
Mm-hmm.
think it's, and I love seeing people passionate about their jobs. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Not trying to take away from that and to be a really
Mm-hmm.
company person, but it's that really that separation of, do you still have an identity outside that your title? And I
Mm-hmm.
think some people, because they give so much of themselves,
Mm-hmm.
that can feel like quite a big void if that title is no longer connected to them.
Yeah. And even coming back to how an industry sees you. Like I remember when I left Johnson and Johnson after 16 years. And it's just really interesting because when I was in the job, you get invited to do lots of keynotes and panels and all that sort of stuff, but they're interested in the title of the person as well. And then suddenly when that title's not there, well, you it's like, oh, you're not in a job. Okay, well, no, we're looking for someone who's currently in a job.
Yeah.
And
Which
so
is
it's
fair as well, right? Because
absolutely that's
yes,
what they're looking for. But you can suddenly going back to your point around you have to be a little bit tough where you're like, I'm not going to please everyone. They're looking for someone in a job at a certain level to be able to, you know, draw people to an event. And, and that's okay if suddenly they're like, oh no, we're going to look for someone else.
yeah.
And that's part of the rocky road.
It's the part of the rocky road, and you've got chapters of your life, and it's just, I think it's just as long as people don't, they still allow a significant portion of their identity to be beyond what their career is giving
Mm,
to them.
yeah, I agree. And know that if the career shifts, that's okay.
Yes.
It's
And
actually
that's
great.
good.
It can take
Yes.
you to a whole different place, which could be amazing. That could be, you know, that next big chapter, that next big adventure.
And I think that's even more important now because I do believe that the chessboard's about to be thrown up in the air with
Mm,
AI and the next sort of stage of the way that we work. So I think
mm,
having that resilience, knowing how you're going to adapt and change is just so incredibly important.
yeah, no, I totally agree. So, so you're obviously in a very new type of role.
Mm.
Talk to me about that and how that's been part of your journey as we're talking about career changes.
Sure. So early last year, I did a course. I could see that this was the next big shift. And we've been talking
Mm,
about MLM learning for years, like machine learning for
mm,
years. But I felt like this was a really seismic shift. And I could see that
mm,
the beginning of last year. And I could see how AI could be used in so many different ways for good. Like,
mm,
I actually think it's going to completely reinvent so many different areas. From, I mean, the areas that excite me is what's happening in the world of medicine, some of the stuff that's
mm,
happening around cancer treatment protocols and research and other areas, just even in terms of how emergency resources are deployed and how we're optimizing some services in the not-for-profit space. The aged care area has really got
mm,
some amazing advancements. And even the schools, like the
mm,
Queensland schools are rolling out trials with teachers and they're
mm,
saving up to 5 hours a week. So, you know,
mm,
teachers that are already overloaded now have some real opportunities to get back to what they love. So I think it's really exciting. There's also some challenges around it. So
mm,
how, as humans, can we evolve and adapt for that?
mm,
And that's why I wanted to go into it, because I can see how this could bring us back to allowing especially marketers to do what we do best, because
mhm,
we are, you know, drained by a lot of admin, a lot of kind of process, and how can we
mm,
actually go back to kind of, you know, allowing AI to enable us to turbocharge our businesses and get back to kind of the soul of good marketing.
mm,
A couple of reasons. One, from a category level, I'm actually
mm,
really excited, but I also think there are some watch outs that I think we need to all
mm,
lean into, which is why I'm doing things like a youth think tank and I'm talking more about the environment and inclusion,
mm,
especially around disability and things, but there's so much good. And then on the next level, which is sort of more I suppose from a career perspective, is I can see so much opportunity, but I also see that there needs to be a way that we actually all work together to actually,
mm,
as an industry, navigate this together, because it is going to be such a seismic shift. So I'm leaning into uncomfortable growth in a major way. From a founder perspective to a whole new category to understanding
mm,
everything, and also understanding the psyche of people going through it, because it's not AI, it's actually,
mm,
like, AI is growing exponentially, right? But it's
mm,
actually how we engage with it. It's actually us, not the AI, right? So
yeah.
it's actually understanding how humans are actually engaging with it and just making sure that, you know, there's a lot of people with a lot of fear at the moment.
Yeah, yeah. And you know, it is I think a fascinating time because it's able to move so much faster than what we experienced, you know, even in the last couple of decades with digital. You know, now there's the ability for it just to move instantly, because the infrastructure is there, is incredible. And, you know, similar to digital, it's not one thing, which is why I think people kind of go, AI is just this thing, but there are so many different applications and approaches and ways it can be harnessed. So it's not just one change. It's multiple changes in multiple ways across multiple years and
Yeah.
ongoing, right? Because it's going to continue to learn. and get
And it's
smarter,
like
get
electricity,
faster.
right? So it's everywhere and all
Mm-hmm.
encompassing. And yeah,
Mm-hmm.
no, it's a I mean, I'm super excited about
Mm-hmm.
where it could go, 100%. But yeah, it is one of those areas that I think people kind of do it as a catch-all, but there's, to your point, there's just so many different elements to it.
So many different elements. And Eva, I really liked what you said about for good, because obviously any technology can be used in a positive way for society or in a negative way for society. And sometimes we're not even aware, right? Like if we look back and kind of look at what we now know about even smartphones and social media, etc. Like there are implications for how it's wiring our brains that we weren't even aware of. And it's
100%. And I
it's
think
only after the fact that you start to see that.
yeah, but we've also, that's the thing that I'm really leaning into is we've also learned along the way. So how do we
Yeah.
actually learn from what worked and didn't work to actually put the
Uh-huh.
right guardrails in place, knowing what we've learned?
Mm,
Um, the other thing that I mean, I did put this up recently on my LinkedIn, but it's interesting in this new world order, and like, especially when you're watching the news and it feels like we're living in some sort of dystopian future sometimes. I
mm,
think people can naturally, when you're talking about comfort, and this is such the antithesis of that,
mm,
then as a result, I've seen people sort of go into 1,000 different sort of versions of what they think the future might look like.
mm-hmm,
And what I put on my LinkedIn was when my son was diagnosed with autism, it's really hard, right? So you come up with 1,000 different scenarios in your head, you project
mm-hmm,
into the future. Then my pediatrician said something that changed, and he said 90 days. He said, how can you be the best mum that you can
mm,
be in the next 90 days and make him the best version of himself? And it
mm-hmm,
was a lovely framing for me. So I think, and it's something I've lived by, is no matter what happens, you should keep an eye on the future, but what can you do
mm-hmm,
right now that's
mm-hmm,
within your control
mm,
to actually make you the best version of yourself in the next 90 days? Because, you could actually hear that this is going to have not much impact or it could have a huge amount of
mm-hmm,
impact.
mm-hmm,
Actually, there's so many different, to your point, there's just a lot of different scenarios. It's not everything's going to be intertwined. So where it actually lands,
mm,
I think will be up to us, but I think what can you control in the next 90 days is kind of key to that.
Stay present and focus on what you can control and what
Yeah.
you can do, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Rather than, yeah, because no one knows. I mean, we all know it's significant. We don't know what it's going to look like.
No, it was a bit like COVID, right? So
Uh-huh.
COVID came, we all thought 100 different scenarios. I don't think
Yeah.
any of us actually thought that all the capital cities would be quiet and,
Yeah.
like but you know what? We adapted. We
Yeah.
found solutions. We actually
Yeah.
worked as communities and we came out at the other side. We learnt lots of valuable lessons,
Mm,
but we went through it and we went through it all together. So I think
mm,
I'm not saying I just think it's interesting because I think it's part of our comfort in that we want to actually understand what the roadmap is in front of us,
mm-hmm,
but actually none of us do. And
mm,
we all we can control is right now and being present.
yeah. And that's a reality, right?
Hmm.
Our, our actions are now. So
Mm.
what do you want to do today? What do you want to do tomorrow? What do you want to do for the next 90 days? And, just focus on what's in front of you.
Whilst keeping it, you can keep an eye on it. You can
Mm,
keep an eye on the future, but how much time do you live there is a different
yeah.
scenario.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Don't live there yet. We don't know
Yeah,
what it
don't
looks
don't
like.
get lost there.
So, and what else? is kind of important to you in your life at the moment? If we're talking about uncomfortable growth, obviously you've had a lot of events happen in your life, and you talked about your son and the book you wrote, and obviously changing, moving into this new role that you're in now as a founder. What are some of the other things that have really impacted how you now think about uncomfortable growth and what that means to you?
So yeah, it's an interesting question because at the moment I feel like I'm constantly in this uncomfortable growth space because I'm in this
Mm,
founder zone, just trying to navigate that. I'm also writing about it. So I'm writing a new book, which
mm,
is around this kind of reinvention and being uncomfortable. And that's actually been kind of quite a lovely experience to kind of
mm,
almost to be able to watch what I'm doing through writing. It's kind of an interesting sort
mm,
of juxtaposition.
mhm,
Um, what's framed me in terms of pushing my uncomfortable growth? Actually, I'm looking up here now. It's kind of interesting. I put photos up of my key travels.
mhm,
When I was 18, um, somebody very important in my life killed themselves. And also, my father had died when I was young as well. And so he died when I was very young. That was obviously a huge seismic impact on my life. But when my friend took his life,
mhm,
it was a really pivotal moment for me because I felt
mhm,
like there was so many things that rushed through my brain. And I started doing this thing of, okay, I'm going to live my life as much as I can and keep pushing myself outside of my comfort zone. And I think in part because I know that my dad would have wanted me to do that, but
mm,
also I wanted to kind of own the present and to really, maximize the opportunities that I'd been given. So I started to do a bucket list almost every year. So I would
mhm,
write, and I never anticipated it would end up going to 1,000 things,
mhm,
right? But I ended up having completing 1,000 things before 50 list.
mhm,
And for me, that's also been kind of a bit of a backstory of my life is how
mhm,
every year pushing myself of what's something new I want to do that's outside of my comfort
mhm,
zone that um yeah, so I'm watching here and it's like walking along the
mhm,
Bund in Shanghai or flying
mhm,
across Africa or swimming in like um Turkey and stuff. It's just been that to me has been a lovely kind of um a lovely backstory, backdrop to my
mhm.
life is how do I keep pushing forward to kind of really honoring having freedom and a life to do that. So,
Yeah,
yeah, sorry, that's
yeah.
sort of,
Oh, that's it. I mean,
yeah.
that's so powerful. Thank you for sharing that because, it's often, I think it's the hard things, very confronting things that stop us in our tracks and make us really think what's important.
Mm,
Or what do I choose? So,
yeah.
and um, it's a really hard and sad and tragic situation when someone passes early. But there are silver linings also for what we do with that. And how we internalize that and how we make our own choices. And
Mm,
I've been a little bit fascinated in the last few years. My parents are in their 80s and their friends are in their 80s, and so they're good age, but they know that they're not going to live forever. Um, and the theme, because I've spoken to them, and is there anything you wish you'd done differently, or what have you taken out? And I actually did a video recording with my dad with his like
Okay.
life. Um, but the key theme that just emerges all the time is just do it and just live and
Mm,
don't take life for granted. Just, it doesn't matter if it doesn't turn out, it doesn't matter if it fails. The only thing that people really regret is not giving it a chance or giving it a
yeah.
go or holding back because, something in the moment held them back.
Mm,
And it's that regret of not seeing what could have been.
mm. It is interesting though, because my grandma died at 104,
Hmm.
and she was married to my grandfather for 72 years. And she didn't have a big life,
Hmm.
but man, she was content. But it kind of goes almost to a life by design. So for
Hmm.
her life by design was to have a life that was simple. Like she never
Hmm.
left the state. But she read every day,
Hmm.
almost a book every day, even up to
Wow.
104. So I think what what makes you you is, I think, and it goes back to that big foam finger I was talking about, is
Mm,
I think being intentional with what you're doing is also incredibly important. Like the thousand things
mm,
before you're 50, that sort
mm,
of is authentically me. I
mhm,
wouldn't necessarily suggest that everybody does that. I think you have to try
mm.
and find, because I was saying it to my son, I said, oh, I've done a thousand things before 50. What would you like to do? And he went, less. And I think that's a really so I think,
Mm,
yes, push yourself out of your comfort zone, but I think it also has to be layered with what is your life by design,
yeah.
because don't try and, m- look
Don't
at
try and
another
copy
person's
someone.
life.
Yeah,
Don't copy. Yeah, just be really clear about what it is you want.
I totally agree. Because that's what's meaningful to you. And the
Yes.
only person who, who you need to look in the mirror at is yourself. So
Yes.
whatever your choices are, yeah, are they the choices that you're happy with?
100%.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really beautiful. And I think that is really important because there is so much comparisonitis in our world, right? And, I don't think that leads to happiness. It's not that you don't want to be challenged or strive, so it's more about knowing you're enough and your choices are about what makes you happy and meaningful, a meaningful life for
100%.
you.
It's also the narrative that we tell ourselves, right? So, you know, if you use, let's say, you can spin it anyway, right? So you could actually, let's use my lovely grandmother. You could say, okay, well, you know, she died at 104. She they didn't have a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't go interstate. Let's use that as, or you
Mm-hmm.
could say she lived a rich, spiritually rich, family rich life, and she lived within her means
Mm-hmm.
and died an incredibly happy, at peace woman.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just an example of, it's the
Mm-hmm.
conversations you spin to yourself as well. So wherever you land, it's almost like, what's the elevator pitch that you're saying to yourself about your life
Mm-hmm.
as well?
Yeah.
Because that, if you then are in a negative loop of
Yeah.
that
Negative loop.
what was it? Comparison.
Comparisonitis.
Um, that loop will actually send you in a pretty bad place.
Yeah.
Whereas if you actually have your own loop of what you believe that's authentically you, I think that's also really important.
Yeah. And yeah, exactly like what's important to you.
Yes.
Yeah. And also discovering how to find that within your means. I think that's another
Yes,
really big piece because, like we live in an expensive world. Um, but, it doesn't mean that we don't have the ability to be happy.
100%. When I was so years ago, I was working for MGM Studios and I loved it.
Mm.
But I decided I wanted to do something completely different. So I picked up my bags and I moved to Cambodia. And I worked for $10,000, I was paid in local wages.
Mm-hmm.
And, the lifestyle I had a really good lifestyle, but I lived within my means.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember around that time, I went to the Phnom Penh garbage dump. There were many families living at the dump going through the rubbish. And it looks like hell, as in it's got big black clouds of smoke everywhere, and like the water
Mm.
actually bubbles with chemicals, and these young kids are going
Mm.
through it and
Gosh.
stuff. And I remember sitting with the families and the happiness they had and the community they had.
Mm-hmm.
And it was around the same time when there was a very, famous Hollywood person. I won't name them, but because I think it's not my story, because it's not my story at all. But they were going through a really big emotional breakdown. And I
Mm.
remember it was the same sort of day that I went. And I
Mm.
went, isn't it fascinating? Because you've got people that are living in this absolute dire
Mm-hmm.
situation that are so much happier
Mm-hmm.
than this person that was at the absolute peak of their career.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's also really interesting when you do layer that moment, that the money across it, because
Mm-hmm.
my experience of working with poor people around the world is they are actually much more spiritually rich than
Mm.
the rich people I've met around the world.
Mm. That's such an amazing insight, and particularly since you've seen that firsthand and, a number of your roles have taken you into those worlds directly. Yeah.
Yes. I remember going to Zambia last year and we went into a community. There was an after school care plan a group. And it was a group of kids in a circle and they were all making up their own song. It was really
Mm.
funny. It was all about being a chicken. It was actually really funny. And I was watching them as the sun was setting with no
Uh-huh.
phones, no devices.
Uh-huh.
And the simple act of just being in that community and being happy. And I was like,
Mm.
I don't know. I don't know if this comparinitis, what is it? If you're wanting to compare, I'm not sure that we'd actually end up being in a better spot,
Yeah.
especially for those kids.
Yeah. Yeah. It's fascinating, isn't it? And those different sources of happiness. So,
100%. And that's the thing.
know,
It goes back to my grandma is
yeah,
I think also when you're looking at your uncomfortable growth and where you're going to, what does happiness look like for
for
you?
you.
And
Hmm.
how do you, we talked about that authenticity,
Hmm.
about the sense of, identity in that. But I
Mm.
think, landing at what makes you truly happy and then
Mm.
actually being uncomfortable, either they're not following everybody else's norms or
Hmm.
actually pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone to land there is just
Hmm.
a really important piece.
Yeah, I totally agree. And doing that in the backdrop of, this high disruption world and all of the shifts that are happening. But that's what's important, right? It's the inside. It's that
Exactly.
what's important to me. What do I choose to do with my life? And at the end of the day, I'm the one who has to look at myself in the mirror and say, did I live my good life? Good for me.
100%.
Yeah. Oh, well, I'm going to ask you a few quick fire questions
Sure.
to wrap up our conversation. So, the first one is, what are three things you've learnt about yourself in recent years?
Um, Ability for reinvention. So I didn't think that I
Mm-hmm.
was actually able to reinvent as much. Um, the power of having a really strong network. Everybody talks about
Mm-hmm.
it, but when you're actually going through it, you realize that incredible power.
Yeah.
And this is going to sound like such a weird third one. I think being
Uh-huh.
structured. So, actually, with all of this, you can have the ideas and goals, but actually being really structured about how you're actually going to roll it out is also
Yeah.
incredibly important.
Yeah. Totally. Totally. I mean, that's exactly why I am so committed to uncomfortable growth is exactly that. It's like, what's your vision and how do you make it happen for you, right?
Yes.
How do you overcome your small self to be your best self more often? Because
Oh,
we
I
all
love
have
that.
the ability to shift between both, and we do simultaneously, right? They coexist. So that's just such a beautiful articulation. Um, Next question, which actually has three parts. What is a challenge, an inspiration, and a dream that you have at the moment? So a challenge, an inspiration, and a dream.
The challenge I have is how do I help bring an industry with some amazing people to navigate this next era of AI.
Mm.
The inspiration, sorry, was it inspiration was the second one?
Inspiration?
The inspiration is I can see how AI can be used for good, and I'm inspired by also thinking about how we can unleash organizations, teams, and where it could actually be used for good.
Yep.
And the third
Your
was, sorry,
dream. Your dream.
my dream.
Your
My
dream.
dream is to have a life by design whereby um, I can actually do passion projects. I'm in a good zone of because I don't
Mhm.
ever want to retire,
Aha.
but I'm in a zone where I can, have more of a life by design so I can choose,
Yeah.
what I
Oh,
want to
that's
do because I can see these amazing opportunities. I want to have a life where I can actually go after those opportunities.
Yeah, that's amazing. Oh, you've given me goosebumps from your answers. That's beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Lou. It's
Thank you for
been such
having
a
me.
wonderful conversation to have with you and given me a lot of things to think about. So thank you.
Oh, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for having me on your show. I love the concept. So thank you.
If you are inspired but thinking, I can't do that, then you are so wrong. Anyone can learn the art of uncomfortable growth with the help of my flagship program, Uncomfortable Growth, Own Your Reinvention. In this, you will learn to navigate your own internal contradictions to finally unlock the courage and commitment to live a deeply meaningful life by design and on your terms. Uncomfortable growth is about the struggle and joy in discovering who you are, what you truly want, and how to make it happen. If this is something you are ready for, then find out more at www.rowenamillward.com. What have you got to lose, or more importantly, gain?